At some point in almost every guy's life, without anyone telling him, without any conscious decision being made, he absorbs a story about how attraction works. And the story goes something like this. There is a girl. She is the prize. She has the power to decide. And your job, your entire job, is to present yourself well enough that she picks you. So you think carefully about what to say. You monitor how she reacts. You adjust based on her signals. You try to be funnier when she seems bored and more serious when she seems deep, and more available when she seems distant. You are constantly, quietly reading the room and reshaping yourself to fit what the room seems to want. And you do all of this so naturally, so automatically, that you don't even realize you're doing it. You just think that's what pursuing someone looks like. That's what showing interest looks like. That's what effort looks like. But here's what's actually happening underneath all of that effort. You've already decided she wins before the relationship exists, before she's done anything to earn it, before you even fully know who she is. You've placed her above you in the dynamic and handed her the authority to decide your value. And the worst part is you did it silently inside yourself, where she can't even see the decision being made, but she feels the result of it in every single interaction. She feels it in how you talk, in how you hold yourself, in the almost imperceptible way you lean toward her approval, and that feeling, that quiet sense that you are angling for something from her, that you need something from this that she hasn't committed to giving, changes how she sees you in ways that are very difficult to reverse. And that's what we're talking about today, not how to play it cool, not how to seem less interested. The real thing, the deeper thing, the shift in frame that changes not just how you act, but how you actually think about this whole dynamic. Because until that internal frame shifts, you can follow every piece of advice in the world, and she will still feel something slightly off, something slightly uneven, something that tells her gut this man is here to be chosen rather than here to choose. And that feeling alone is enough to quietly drain the attraction from almost any situation. Let's go back to the beginning of this. Where does the story come from? Why do so many men walk into dynamics with women already positioned below them internally? A lot of it comes from how attraction gets framed early in life. You know, the guy who gets the girl is the one who works hard enough, who says the right things, who demonstrates enough value. It's framed as a performance with her as the audience and her approval as the score. And that framing is so deeply embedded in the culture, in movies, in music, in the way older guys talk about women, that most men never question it. It just becomes the water they swim in, the invisible operating system running underneath every interaction they have. And look, there's nothing wrong with wanting someone to like you. There's nothing wrong with caring about how an interaction goes. That's just being human. The problem is when wanting her to like you becomes the entire purpose of the interaction. When impressing her is the goal, rather than discovering whether she's genuinely someone you want to invest in. When you've already made the decision that she is worth your best effort before you actually know enough about her to make that call. That's where the frame breaks. That's where you hand over the power before the game even starts. Here's a question I want you to actually sit with for a moment. The last girl you were really into, when did you decide she was worth pursuing? What did you actually know about her when you made that call? Was it based on who she is, her character, her values, how she treats people, what she's building with her life, how she makes you feel when you're actually around her? Or was it based on how she looks and how it felt to be seen talking to a girl like her? Be honest, because for most guys, Especially early on, it's almost entirely the second thing. And when you're chasing someone you don't actually know yet, when you're performing for the approval of a person who hasn't earned your investment yet, that's when the frame gets distorted from the very beginning. You're not choosing her, you're reacting to her, and reacting is not the same as choosing. The shift I'm talking about is not arrogance. I want to be really clear about that because um, I know how this can sound. It's not walking around thinking you're better than everyone. It's not treating women like they should be grateful for your attention. That energy is just insecurity facing the other direction, and it's equally unattractive. The shift I'm talking about is simply this: you start bringing genuine discernment to the process. You start actually asking yourself whether this person is someone worth the energy you're considering giving. Not as a test, not as a game, just as a natural consequence of you actually valuing your own time and attention and emotional investment, because those things are not nothing. They are real resources. They are finite. And a man who knows that shows up differently than a man who gives them away automatically to anyone who smiles at him. When you have genuine discernment, the dynamic changes from the inside out. You're not performing, you're observing, you're not trying to close the gap between you. You're trying to figure out if the gap should be closed at all. You're paying attention not just to whether she likes you, but to whether you genuinely like her, not just the version of her that's attractive and charming in the first few conversations, the actual her. How does she talk about other people? How does she handle moments of friction? Is she someone who adds something real to your life, or just someone whose approval makes you feel temporarily better about yourself? These are the questions a man with a real frame is asking. And those questions, that genuine curiosity about her rather than anxious monitoring of whether she approves of him, changes everything about how he comes across. Because here's what she feels when she's talking to a man who is genuinely evaluating her, not performing for her, not trying to win her, actually deciding. She feels seen in a different way. She feels like the interaction has stakes that go both directions, like she is also being considered, not just doing the considering. And that feeling is rare because most men she meets have already quietly decided she wins before the first conversation ends. Most men are already in audition mode before she said a word, and she knows it. She can feel the invisible performance happening, and even if she enjoys the attention in the moment, she doesn't respect it, not fully, because it costs nothing for a man to be impressed by her before he knows her. That kind of admiration is automatic. It's not earned, and she knows it. But when a man talks to her and she senses that he is genuinely deciding that his attention is not guaranteed, that he is present and engaged and interested, but not yet committed, that his approval is something she'd actually have to earn, something happens in her that is almost involuntary. She starts to try, not in a desperate way, in a natural way, the way anyone tries when they sense that something worth having is not automatically going to be theirs. She's a little more present, a little more herself, a little more curious about who he is and whether he's going to like what he finds. And that shift in her is not manipulation. It's just the natural response to genuine polarity, to actually feeling like there are two people in the interaction rather than one person performing and one person deciding. Let me tell you what this looks like in practice, because I don't want this to stay abstract. It looks like asking questions that you actually care about the answers to, not questions designed to seem deep or interesting. Actual genuine curiosity about who she is, and then actually listening to the answers, not to formulate your next impressive response, just to find out who she is. It looks like having opinions, and sharing them without checking her face first to see if they'll land. It looks like being willing to disagree with her without immediately softening it or walking it back. It looks like having standards for the interaction that go beyond whether she thinks you're attractive. Standards like, is this conversation actually interesting to me? Is this person adding something, or am I just excited to be near her? Is there genuine compatibility here, or am I projecting what I want onto someone I barely know? And it looks like being genuinely willing to walk away if the answer to those questions is not good enough, not as a tactic, not to make her want you more, just because your time and energy are real things and you respect them. A man who is genuinely willing to walk away from something that doesn't serve him is operating from a completely different internal frequency than a man who will tolerate almost anything because he needs the outcome to go his way. She feels that frequency. She feels the difference between a man who is here because he chose to be here and a man who is here because he needs this to work. And one of those men she will chase, the other she will manage. And here's the part that's hardest to talk about, honestly. A lot of men use the energy of not caring as a performance without actually doing the internal work that creates real not caring. They learn somewhere that appearing unaffected is attractive, which it is, so they perform unaffected, while internally they are very much affected. They delay text, not because they're genuinely busy, but because they calculate how long to wait. They hold back compliments, not because they're naturally reserved, but because they read that scarcity creates value. They act hard to get while secretly being desperate to get. And this performance, even when it's executed well technically, has a hollow quality she will eventually feel, because authenticity has a texture that performance cannot perfectly replicate. And she has had enough conversations with enough men to sense the difference between a man who is genuinely unbothered and a man who is acting unbothered while checking his phone every 20 minutes. The only way to actually have the energy is to actually do the work of building real self-respect, real standards, a real life you are genuinely invested in beyond what happens with her, real options, not to wave in her face, but to give yourself the genuine psychological freedom that comes from knowing you are not dependent on this one specific outcome. When you have real options, when you genuinely believe at a cellular level that you will be fine and whole and moving forward regardless of how this goes, you stop performing detachment and you just are it. And that genuine quality is not something that can be faked convincingly forever. It either comes from a real place or it doesn't come at all. I want to say something about the men watching this who feel like they've lost this frame completely. Like they're already deep in a dynamic where they've been performing, where they've already given over too much, where she already knows she has the power and they don't know how to reclaim it without it looking like a game. The honest answer is you can't fully reclaim it by doing something different. You can only reclaim it by becoming something different, by actually doing the internal work, going back to your own life, your own purpose, your own standards, not as a strategy to make her suddenly more interested just because you deserve to be in your own corner. And sometimes when a man genuinely reclaims himself, the dynamic shifts, and sometimes it doesn't. And a man with a real frame can accept either outcome without it breaking him, because the frame was never about her. It was always about him. Stop auditioning, stop adjusting, stop monitoring her reactions to calibrate your next move. Stop performing the version of yourself you think she wants and start being the version of yourself that you actually respect. Bring your real opinions into the room. Bring your real standards. Bring your genuine curiosity about whether she is actually someone worth the investment you're considering. Let her feel that she is being evaluated the same way she is evaluating you. Let her feel the weight of two people actually deciding rather than one person deciding and one person hoping. Because the most attractive man in any room is never the one who wants it most. It's the one who needs it least, not because he's cold, not because he doesn't care, but because he came into the room already full, already decided about himself, already at peace with who he is and where he's going. And he's simply checking to see if she fits into that, not the other way around. That's the frame. Get it and keep it. Everything else follows from there.